Hello and welcome to the Under Center podcast. Welcome back to the show. The Super Bowl has been set. It's the Kansas City Chiefs against the Philadelphia Eagles. Probably the matchup everyone least wanted to see, unless you're a Chiefs bandwagon fan or a Philadelphia degenerate. And Rian, before we get launched into the show, in a week where the Commanders lost 55-22 in the NFC Championship game to a division rivals, somehow it's the Jaguars head coach who has the most embarrassing moment of the footballing news cycle, which was pretty horrendous. I believe this is the same guy, right? That basically double dipped. Like the Buccaneers said they'd pay him a load of money if he pulled out of the coaching search for the Jaguars, and then he went ahead and signed for the Jaguars anyway. And then he launched himself into stardom with that kind of press conference. That was pretty shocking stuff.
Look, I presume he's got an excellent football brain. I mean, he made Baker Mayfield look pretty good over there in Tampa Bay, but he just has, it's one of your favorite words, Fionn, aura. He has zero aura. He has negative aura. That snippet that everybody's seeing where he goes, Duval, is one of the cringiest things I've ever seen in my life. I understand it's a slogan for the team and you're looking to get the fan base behind you, but all of the great coaches that spring to mind, you know, John Madden, Bill Belichick, they've all had this aura about them, and it just doesn't fit that. I'd be worried about that team.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a sense of we're not an offensive coordinator anymore, Toto, and like have to stand up there in the pulpit and talk for 20 minutes and answer, and then all of a sudden people are actually listening to what comes out of your mouth. I think it's going to be interesting to see. Also, the Jaguars have had a bit of trouble at head coach. Peterson was pretty stable. Obviously, they had Urban Meyer before that. He went around kicking basically anything that moved, apparently, and groping at anything that didn't move fast enough away. So, not the most glamorous zone to be in as a head coach. But Al, you must be super excited because one of the other big news of the news cycle pre-championship game was, of course, that your favorite coach, senior Mr. Pete Carroll, is made it back. We did raise concerns here on this podcast. Does he remember that the Raiders have moved to Las Vegas and are no longer in Oakland? That's going to be a big challenge for him. For anyone who doesn't get the joke, we have, first of all, maintained that the man had Alzheimer's while he was coaching the Seattle Seahawks, but also now sets the record as the oldest head coach ever in NFL history, I believe. So, or certainly the oldest head coach signing in NFL history. So, Al, are you expecting big and amazing things out of the Raiders next season?
No, because their roster is still a heap of shit. So, like, you know, Andy Reid could, hop in there and he's still going to have a horrible season. I'm excited for him. I'm glad to see they got, someone that isn't totally terrible in there. I don't know what he's going to be like, He was with his NFL experiences with the Jets and New England when they were terrible, and then the Seahawks for 10 years, or 14 years was it?
They were kind of terrible though when he took over, right?
Well, the Seahawks were terrible. Well, they were good, and then they were really bad for a year, and then he took over, and then they had two sort of mid seasons, and then they won the Super Bowl. So, I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do with that, to be honest. They need, like, every position needs doing over there. Like, it just needs a complete overhaul. So, I think
they're
the best...
pretty set at edge rusher, to be honest.
Are they?
Well,
are they? I mean, they have picks there, but that doesn't mean they're set.
And Max Crosby obviously is injured, so I don't know if he's going to come back at full strength or even re-sign. I don't know what his contract situation is like, but I think it's going to be interesting. I imagine based on how Pete Carroll ended his tenure in Seattle, that I don't expect the GM job now in Las Vegas is particularly high profile. He had a little bit of a control issue over there in Seattle, and also I think he's going to be happy enough now that he gets to select his quarterback. He's done well before. Obviously, he built a good connection with Russell Wilson that eventually fell down, but they got a lot of good years out of that duo and that combo. So I think if he can find himself a quarterback, he's shown that he can get the most out of them and build a good mentality or a good culture within the locker room. It's about, as Al said, there's a lot of talent deficit. Has he proved to be an expert talent evaluator and talent scout? I don't know. Certainly, he's had some good hits in his time. So we'll wait and see if you're a Vegas fan, if there are any. I don't know. I wouldn't be holding my breath, but certainly interesting. A very Vegas move. Also, the question kind of raises as well, like in a similar manner to the Patriots signing Vrabel of like Pete Carroll was available this year as well. So like, what was it over the last year? Did he ask for a number? Did your experience over the past season change your mind about the number that he had asked for or something? Yeah, that's what I find interesting is these coaches that have been sitting around for a year off, and both of these teams now also had coaching vacancies that they filled somewhere else. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see how they do. We'll move on to the games. We'll start at the NFC Championship game. It was close for the first maybe 2 quarters, and after that, then it kind of steamrolled away from them. Reem, we were talking on the chat. By no means were we claiming to be expert analysis, but I think the game basically went how we thought it would. The Eagles won by relying on Barkley, allowing him to do their damage, and getting Hurts not to put the ball in harm's way. Do what you do best. Roll out. I don't even think he had a particularly spectacular game, but he was accurate when he needed to be accurate. He rolled out a little bit and took some dubious decisions, but ultimately didn't turn the ball over and gave Philadelphia all the chances to win. We had highlighted that like the Commanders were doing well just to be there. They needed a perfect game like they had against the Lions. Very difficult to do back to back. And ultimately the Eagles were just trying not to throw the game away. And as well as we highlighted, Commanders really needed to get the run game going, and I don't feel they ever did. Obviously, the scoreline, particularly dramatic at the end, kind of the wheels came off the wagon a little bit there in the end of the third into the fourth quarter, probably to be expected. But what were your takeaways? Is there, and I think maybe we should focus mostly on the Eagles, given now that they're going to the Super Bowl. Is there any pros and cons of the performance that you saw against the Commanders that they can, number one, take into the Super Bowl with them, but 2, maybe more interestingly, any gaps you saw that the Chiefs might take advantage of or the Eagles are going to have to keep an eye on in practice over the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jalen Hurts did a really good job against the Commanders secondary. The Commanders secondary is pretty good, I would say. Maybe not up to the scratch that you see over there in Kansas City. So it'll be interesting to see how he deals with those more experienced cornerbacks and safeties that they have out there. I think as well what the Chiefs will be keying in on was I didn't see a whole lot of pass rush from the Commanders. They struggled to get penetration from what I saw. They're going to be looking at that saying that's something that possibly we can take advantage of. Chris Jones, obviously in the middle of that defense, is going to demand some double teams at stages, which is going to open up the other guys on that defensive line. Maybe that's something that they're looking for or looking to exploit. Defensively, the Eagles looked pretty strong. You know, the Commanders moved the ball on a couple of drives, and once they got it figured out a little bit, it then became very, very tough for the Commanders to move the football. So we were kind of expecting that from the Eagles. They do have a very good defense at all 3 levels. So they will be looking to take advantage of that versus Patrick Mahomes, because Patrick Mahomes has heated up so far in this playoff run. So they'll be looking to put an end to that kind of run of form that he's had.
Al, special teams, I think, particularly for the Eagles, played well this game. The Commanders were, even on the one where they scored the touchdown, they were not only having to run the ball but have to cover a large percentage of the field. They were pinned back quite often, made to go 70, 80 yards to try and get a score. Also, obviously, the fumble as well that was caused on the kickoff. Is that something you think the Eagles can leverage? Was that a weakness of the Commanders, do you think? Or is that something that the Eagles can really leverage on a particular strength of their special teams?
I think they can definitely leverage it. I mean, not to say anything too much about the Chiefs' special teams. Like, they're actually pretty good as well. Like, their return guy, I can't think of his name. He's excellent, and has been all year. But yeah, no, it's definitely something they can, because it's actually one of their stronger points, like, overall. Their special teams.
One exception. Jake Elliott has been awful.
Well, yeah, I'll give you that one.
So bad.
I'll give you that one. But like, yeah, they've been pretty good. There's no reason they can't do it. But I think the Chiefs will make it a bit more of a challenge than the Commanders, who are lacking in several areas. You're going to have a bunch of defensive guys playing special teams, and I mean, we saw it there in that game. They just got run over. I think didn't they score like 7 touchdowns or something on the defense? So like, yeah, I think it's going to be something to watch next week.
I think it's interesting as well, just watching the game. We obviously, going back to what we highlighted earlier, Saquon Barkley is the difference maker in that Eagles game. And anytime an offense can get a running back that really can do a lot of damage, it really disrupts the defense. And I think we saw that against the Commanders as well, where obviously Saquon had that little rattle the cage a little bit. Very first play, 60-odd yards for a touchdown. That's a dampener. I think the Commanders managed to respond well enough. In other words, not let the game completely run away from them straight after that moment. And ultimately, it highlighted what we were trying to highlight pre-game, which was the running backs can do an awful lot of damage on the ground, but it's hard to score. I know in the end, they kind of piled on. I think they got a couple of extra rushing touchdowns as well. But that kind of taking first half where the game was tight, Saquon was dominant. They were doing a lot of damage. But when you can get a team pinned back, one of the drives where the Commanders were successful at stopping the Eagles was when they made them have to go 20, 25 yards. And I think that's where the Eagles need to be a little bit careful is Hurts needs to be good enough and continue this run. I'm not at all bashing how he performed against Commanders, but I think he did exactly what he needed to do. He had to be careful with the ball, and he was. And then the other thing I think that you highlighted that really stood out to me as well, I think is a great point, is because of that imbalance that Saquon was able to set up against the Commanders defense, I think they were ultimately very worried about the run, and it offset a lot of the pass rush. I think they were trying to keep the pocket clean. Look, Payne being out as a huge run stopper, that was obviously something they had to deal with. But I don't think the guys played particularly bad in the middle. Obviously, when the game went off, of course, the whole defense kind of went very porous. But again, focusing on that first half, because ultimately the Eagles in the Super Bowl is much more likely to be more like the first half of the game than the second half of the game. And I think, to go back to what you highlighted, I think the middle of the offensive line is going to be a problem. I agree with you. I don't think the Commanders got enough of a pass rush on Jalen Hurts. But my concern as an Eagles fan is when the ball was not in Saquon Barkley's hands and the pass rush did get through the middle, I think he didn't look particularly good rolling out. He couldn't find a way to get away from the edge rushers, and he couldn't find a way to get his passers open downfield, keep his eyes downfield. 3 or 4 times he just threw the ball out of bounds, which is good. That's what the Eagles want him to do. But I think if the Chiefs can put pressure and force him into those situations more often, that's when it becomes a little bit more critical. That's when you put him under stress, where fine, 3-4 throwaways is great. 8, 9, 10 throwaways. Now as an offense, you're under pressure, because we said the running back can do a lot of damage. But ultimately, if you're going to win a game only on the ground, that's a lot of work. You need your quarterback to be able to make those dynamic game-changing plays. And Hurts didn't have to do that. That's the only thing I want to highlight as an Eagles, maybe negative. Yeah. He didn't have to do that. He wasn't forced to do that in the Commanders game. And it'll be important to keep that balance there, I feel like, going into the next game. I don't really want to focus, obviously, on the Commanders too much. Obviously, the pain it's caused me. Ultimately, a good season, I think, though, well above expectation for everybody. I think the Lions win is a signature win, something Daniels can hang his hat on going into future campaigns. And as I said to you guys, I think as a Commanders fan, this might have been the best season, right? Now there's expectations. Now it's we better make the playoffs next year. We've got Daniels and we can't waste his career. Rian, what did you think of the Commanders, I guess, in the game and maybe broadly speaking, how the season went for them, takeaways, and maybe interestingly, anywhere that you think they can most improve going into next season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can't be denied that it was a successful season for the Commanders. When you look at what the preseason expectation was, I don't think any of us had them going anywhere outside of like third or fourth in the division, 5-6 wins at the very most. So the run that they've been on has been nothing short of spectacular. Weirdly enough, where they've been successful this year has been in the passing game. Terry McLaurin has looked good. The other guy's name over on the other side.
Brown? Or
yes. Yeah, Brown has looked good. He's been a deep threat for them. But for me, where I would focus is actually on that receiver room. If you can get a third guy to go in there, and the name that springs to mind is T. Higgins. If you can get T. Higgins in that team, I think that becomes a very, very dangerous passing attack. I think they probably need to draft a running back at some stage, but this running back class coming out of college is super deep. There is value to be had deep into the third round, I think, in this running back class. So, yeah, they need somebody there who's got a little bit more explosiveness than Eckler and a little bit more, let's say, quickness, shiftiness than Robinson. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's where I would be going. But I would be still focusing on this side of the ball, the offensive side of the ball. I think that's what's going to, if they win a championship, that's where they're going to win it from, even though that defense has been a little bit porous at times.
Yeah, Al, I know you're kind of a cap guy. I think the Commanders are second or third in the league at the moment in terms of free cap.
They have like
into next
85 million heading into next year or something like that. That's such a good position to be in.
Outside of the wide receiver room, where would you be focusing? Reen highlighted the running backs as well. I wouldn't be going after it, but I mean, if there's a stud defensive end going out there, I think that always improves the defense. Where are you looking at if you're a Commanders GM?
Linebacker. Only linebacker. Like, look, I love Bobby Wagner, but it was tough to watch him in this game. His legs are gone.
Yeah.
They're like anything outside of 5 yards, forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
He's so slow. He looks lost out there. Like, I think he's still very smart. You can tell he knows what's going on. He just can't get there. So, like, they have to look at linebacker. And yeah, I agree. Like a good defensive end or like a tree technique to slot in there. Like that defense needs some serious work. Like,
I agree.
Looking at what's his name? The cornerback, not Seren Still.
St. Just? I don't remember who was
no,
on it. Oh,
Lattimore. He got fucking bullied by Brown so hard. He looked lost. And that's another one. You can save 18 million, no dead cap, if you cut him in the offseason. So
yeah, I think the concern for the Commanders there is just depth at corner. I think he did pretty well. And Lattimore, I think, is one of those really difficult ones because yes, AJ Brown bullied him, pushed him around. But the other flip side of that is you don't play AJ Brown every week in the NFL.
True.
And for the regular season, he was plenty. He didn't play all the regular season, granted, but I think he did pretty well. So I think I think if they can get like a Luvu style guy in beside Luvu, if you can get that two middle linebackers humming, I think that helps in the run game and it helps in the pass game. And I mean, obviously now, after what Bond did for the Eagles playing in the Super Bowl, came from basically nowhere last year. I think now you just get a sense that linebacker market is going to be pretty, like, there's going to be a hyper fixation on it from GMs. Like, who's the next Bond? Is there anyone else floating around there that we see on tape that no one else recognizes?
I'll put a name forward. I'll put a name forward for that one. Shaq Thompson.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be a former.
They worked very, very well together at the Panthers. Thompson is still he's a little bit older. He's going to cost a bit of money, but he is superb. He's coming off an injury, but him and Luvu together is a very, very dynamic middle linebacker core. So it's someone who might be available.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be against a little bit like you do in the quarterback room, where you kind of keep his name is gone, Wagner around one more year, even draft or get a young guy in there where Wagner's playing, 60% of the snaps and this guy's playing 40% of the snaps until you're playing against a Saquon or a Henry or a someone where you're going to need the speed on the outside to get there, because he can learn a lot from Wagner. And then ultimately, Al, I think you've nailed it. He's just that half step short. He is not that guy. He has the head like the guy that played for the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think he has the legs. If I'm looking at the Commanders, having watched them all year, me personally, I think it's the offensive line. I think, and it kind of feeds into what you guys are saying in the running back room, Rain. I like Robinson. I think for a long time, we've struggled to have a running back. And I think he hit a couple of long runs that we had been 2 or 3 seasons without like a 25 plus yard runs. Robinson was a guy who did that. Now, he got bottled up as well against the Eagles, but he ran well in the first quarter. He got a couple of like 8-9 yard runs and then started to get stuffed when they figured out there wasn't much else. I agree with you with Eckler. I think we've had this conversation 2 or 3 times, even last week, just saying Eckler is fine as that switch in guy. I think he's really a pass-catching running back now at this point. I don't know if he has the explosiveness. Of course, he has the experience to break one out, nice vision. I just don't think like 20, 25 times a game is he going to be a running back? No. And so at 12 times a game, his value is in that dynamics. And the Commanders have done this before with McNichols, who's still on the team. Back in the last kind of group of running backs we had, that was his role, right? Just come in on third down, add that extra wrinkle, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, right on the edge of run range. I can definitely hand it off to this guy. He might make it, but he's also going to go on a wheel route, and you better make sure you have a guy covering him as well. So I think if that's me, I go for the offensive line. I think Daniels doesn't need much. So any value you can add there is really going to improve it. And then with Daniels, as we said, in the kind of like Lamar Jackson style, if you can keep the defense off balance, you maximize his talents of being able to break it out with good decision making or hang in the pocket and throw it. So we managed to eke out 25 minutes talking about the NFC blowout championship game. Let's move on to the AFC, much tighter affair. And I guess I'm going to start, Al, with a hard question. I'm going to ask this straight to you. Did the Buffalo Bills bottle this game? They had the ball in their hands, tie ball game or 3 points down with 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left, and somehow the Chiefs got the ball back.
Yeah. A little bit. It was various reasons. Alan just didn't look great, especially in that first quarter. He did get better as the game went along. So, he didn't look, horrible for the whole game. Their offensive line, just crucial moments, not the whole game, but like crucial moments. They just like that last play, 4th and 5, that last play, instant pressure, game over. Like, and then there was the
rushed 6. He's got to I'm sorry, but Allen has got to fucking recognize that pressure and check out of what he's doing. Keep a running back in. Not on the offensive line.
The play calling as well, like the 2-point conversions. I don't get that. Like, it wouldn't have saved the game. Like, but I don't get it. Like, why? You're not multiple scores down. There's a score in it for each of those. Just take the fucking points. And then there's a point in it, and it doesn't look, I know 3 points isn't much, but it doesn't look so far away then. A field goal, and rather than going to overtime, you've won. So many little things. They just, on a much smaller scale than the Commanders, but same thing. They sort of beat themselves. They have, you saw the flashes, like offensively, they can look amazing and do amazing things. Like, I think it was Mac Hollins like made the play of the game, like brilliant one-handed catch, you know, in coverage against I think it was Snead. Like they can. They just fucked themselves one too many times. You know, they didn't capitalize on the turnover, I don't think. And then, you know, just pressure at the wrong times, iffy play calling at the wrong times. Those 2-point conversions, the Chiefs are beatable, but you know, they're not. I don't know. I don't know what's the best way to put that, but yeah, it was frustrating to watch it because it's just, as you said, it's just, yeah, this is the last thing everyone wants to watch again. The Eagles and the Chiefs. I would much rather the Bills and Eagles, or Bills and Commanders would be pretty fun.
Yeah, Ryan, I think it's interesting. My question to you is, obviously Mahomes is Mahomes, right? At the moment, the AFC goes through the Chiefs. The Bills have had 4 cracks in a row at it. First 2 years, they were kind of plucky team behind Allen. Then 2 years ago, last year, they had the stud wide receivers, right? They had Diggs. They started to get the offense together, and they couldn't do it. Now this year, they've got the running back in there. They've lost Diggs, obviously, but they've got the running back power in there. They still haven't done it. So they've had 4 cracks, 4 different ways to try and win, and they haven't managed to. Do you think this has now become psychological within the Bills, or is it ultimately down to the fact that the 4 guys, no matter what way they've tried to do it, the same guy has beat them all 4 times, and it's more to do with how impenetrable Mahomes is, as opposed to can the Bills find out what it is that makes them great and elevates them from the second last game of the season into the last game of the season?
It is a tricky one because, like you say, I think this Bills team over the past 5 years has specifically been set up to beat the Chiefs. And they've done that in the regular season. They have not done that in the playoffs, not once. And that's the tough part. It is going to start getting psychological for this Bills team. Is this going to be a hump that they cannot get over? Every time they're going to see Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs on that schedule coming into the postseason, it's going to raise the heart rate just a little bit because, you know, it's happened 4 times now. And of those 4, Patrick Mahomes has gotten the better of them each and every go. Now, in this one, I don't think it was so much Patrick Mahomes who won that game. It was, they were just better coached, you know, better coached. I think the one thing that stood out to me was the 4 tush pushes that they had in the game. They went 0 for 4 and they ran the exact same play each and every time. After 3, you've got to switch that up, whether it's run to the right or leak a tight end in behind and do a little toss over the top. You can't do the same thing 4 times in a row and expect it to just magically work. They had the better of you on that play. Don't go back to it for a 4th time. I think as well, it's worth talking about the narrative at the moment around the Chiefs and the referees. A lot of people were saying that the Chiefs got some dubious calls in their favor in this one as well. And I cannot disagree more, to be honest. Every single play that's brought up has some level of contention in it. So the main one being the 4th down that was called short of the line to gain and was confirmed through replay. There was no way of 100% definitively saying that ball had crossed the line. The incompletion that was a whatever the 35-yard catch by, I think it was Worthy. That was like jump ball between the 2 of them. It touched the ground, yes, but the rules say it can touch the ground so long as it doesn't move within the possession of the receiver. It counts as a catch, so I'm on board with that one. It's just, it feels like people are looking for an excuse to drive this narrative forward. And in this game, I don't think the refereeing was very one-sided.
I have a feeling, Ryan, that our own frustrations of where the Super Bowl is again this season is really just feeding into that, right? And Al, you mentioned something funny that I wanted to pick up on as well. Like the Chiefs feel beatable. Well, they felt beatable all season, and no one's really managed to do it except for the Bills.
Yeah.
So, and when it came down to it, the Bills couldn't get it done again. So I find it really interesting.
It's because of what Rian was saying, is they're just better coached.
Mm-hmm.
They keep winning despite them being beatable, despite them not being, they don't have all the talent in the world to beat these teams. They're just better coached. They execute better. They play better. And that's what counts at the end of the day. You don't need everyone to be all pros. Kelsey's an absolute, he's been fine this season, but he's not, doing much, and it's fine. Next man up on the Chiefs.
But I think that's as well what makes them so dangerous is like it's like we're trying to articulate. They just find a way to win, right? They've enough talent in every spot on the defense. Sometimes do they hold and get away with it? Yeah, maybe. But also they're holding because they're usually draped over every wide receiver that's in there. The defensive line is incredibly strong against the run and the pass. Like it's hard work no matter what way you're playing them defensively. On the offensive side, you've got Worthy, you've got Kelsey. Do they always play great? No, but like last game, Kelsey has over 100 yards. This game, he has like 12 yards, and Worthy has all the yards. And then you've got Smith-Schuster, who hasn't done anything all season, catches 2 30-yard passes and does a whole heap of damage. So that's what I'm saying. The running back gets going, and Patrick Mahomes, I think, did something very interesting this game. He reminded everybody that he's a very good scrambler. And maybe that's just on me, or maybe the narrative of when we had Allen and Lamar in the Super Bowl, that his scrambling just doesn't get mentioned as much because I think everyone knows he's got wheels, right? But I think people more talk about his slides or his slowing down on the sideline to get popped and like draw a flag and all this stuff. Like, he reminded people like, hey, you know what? If you back off me, I could take this thing 10, 15 yards each run. And I think that's going to be very dangerous for the Eagles because at the start, like Daniels did some damage with his legs. And I think if Daniels can do it, Mahomes can do it. And he adds that extra element of all the other elements around them. At the very least, they don't beat themselves. They always have one guy in one position who's playing playoff Super Bowl winning football, whether Kelsey is or Worthy is, or like any of the other guys, or the running back is going strong. They always have it. They always have that little element that's just enough to win. I think that's what's frustrating the fans to look at, but it's what makes them so interesting, so beatable, because they're never all right. They're not blowing teams out. I don't think they blew anybody out this year, right? They had the most one-score wins of any team in the NFL this year. So they're not blowing teams out, but they're also not losing games either, right? And all those kind of like, how many teams that every year there's a team like, oh, if you flipped it, this team went 6 and 12, and they ended up with, but if they'd have flipped the one-score games they lost, they'd have been 13 and whatever. And the Chiefs just don't do it. They win them. They just don't lose them. And I think that's really interesting. I want to have a little bit more of a conversation. I think we'll leave it because obviously next week we've got the Pro Bowl coming up. Everybody's favorite. There's going to be a lot of analysis to come off that. So I feel like we should leave maybe some of the Super Bowl preview for next week and do some analysis. We'll get some bets going, some good prop bets and stuff. So we'll do some research on that. I want to talk a little bit then about the Pro Bowl, just to say, like, I think it's interesting. The NFL has moved away from the match now, right? And I think it's interesting. I think if it wasn't televised, no one would give a shit about the Pro Bowl in a good way. I don't think it would annoy people as much as it does because it's on TV and it's just the NFL trying to make more money and more advertising. I think if they just build it as like, look, it's the lads, free holiday to Orlando, play a bit of crack, hang out with some of the guys you went to college with or whatever. Grand, it's not televised. Here's who won, who gives a shit, and loads of money went to charity, and this guy got a car or whatever it is. I don't know. Al, what do you think? I think I'm leaning more than ever in. Don't scrap it. Just shut up about it, kind of.
Yeah, it's no one cares about it anymore, really. So like, do it. Say, hey, these players were good. Here's some fun little things they're doing. But like, no one cares. No one. It's not like, how many people actually watch the Pro Bowl anymore? Like the games haven't been fun for a while, and they've scrapped that. And now it's just some kind of crappy games. Like,
It's a
it was
sports
almost
day.
better.
It's a school sports day.
Yeah, but it was
That's
almost
exactly
better.
what that's got to be my analogy. Fucking school sports day. This is a grown man sport. Fuck off. Give them an award, right? You made a Pro Bowl. Congratulations. Don't fucking do anything. It's derogatory to be.
It was almost better when
playing fucking dodgeball.
It was almost better when you had Peyton Manning and whoever turn up, like, hey, who can throw farthest? Cool. Peyton Manning can throw 70 yards. Cool. That's it. Like, it was almost better when it was just bare bones, basic like that with some, basic skill stuff. But they're trying to make it too flashy, and it just doesn't work.
Rian, I have a proposal. You know the way the obviously the flag football has made it into the Olympics for the next cycle. So now there's a lot of stuff coming up there. And there was also a lot of trash talk between the NFL players and the American flag football team about who should and shouldn't represent. Why don't now, for the next 3 Pro Bowls, the Pro Bowlers play the flag guys in flag, and if the flag guys don't win 3 in a row, they go, right, fuck you lot. It's the Pro Bowlers for the whatever it is, the LA Olympics in 2029 or wherever it is. And you guys lost your chance. The NFL pro guys proved there's a reason you didn't play pro football. What do you think of that for a proposal?
I think that's great, but I don't think it's ever going to happen because there's a danger that the NFL gets their feelings hurt by these guys who do this thing as a living. Like, I think that the NFL guys would wax them every time. 99 times out of 100, an NFL team waxes the national team of flag football. But you can't be 100% certain. And I think if they televised a game like that and the flag team with fucking Johnny, whatever his name is, beats Patrick Mahomes.
Well, first of all, I think it's Lamar. I don't think you do Patrick Mahomes. You got to go Lamar in the Pro Bowl. Probably because Mahomes is always busy playing in the fucking Super Bowl. So
it's because he was calling out Mahomes, wasn't he? The flag guy. He was like, "I'm better than Mahomes," And it's like, no, you're not.
I mean, I don't think
we worry to be in the NFL making $50 million a year.
I don't think we can play Mahomes just because, like, he's always in the Super Bowl, right? So he's always busy for the Pro Bowl. He can never be there. At least Lamar has a chance to be available for it. But yeah, I think that's interesting. Look, I wouldn't be in favor of just a trophy. I think give the lads a holiday, right? Go and like do whatever. I agree.
Sure.
Scrap the bullshit sports. Just say, look, instead of everyone like the winner gets a car, there's Orlando. We take you and your family to Disneyland, whatever, hang out with your buddy and the guy you went to college with and have a mess with the division rival. Fucking, they all have podcasts now, which is a bit tongue-in-cheek for us to say, but you know what I mean? Fucking go off there and set up your podcast booth and everyone does 32 podcasts and has each other as guests and play Madden and all that stuff and just leave them at it. Just NFL, leave them at it. We don't need to see it. It's not interesting. You're not selling us anything. It's lost its appeal. But also, why not just keep it? It's fine. It's voted for by us, and great, fantastic. The fans get a say. Anyway, that's all I have on my agenda. Obviously, only 2 games to talk about this week, so we had a little bit of a short. Is there anything I missed out on? I'm not like that. I don't have my stuff written down, so I do feel like we didn't talk as much about the AFC as we did about the NFC, which is ironic. But look, I think we hit the ultimate nails. I think Alan still has steps to go. The Bills need to figure it out. I guess one question I will ask just before we finish. Sean McDermott's in a weird spot right now, right? Because he keeps getting to the playoffs. He keeps getting to the AFC championship game, but he can't win it. Does that seat ever get hot? Is it a little bit like of a Kirk Cousins situation? Both of you guys were talking about some dubious play calling which ultimately hurt the Bills in that game. At what point do we start to point the finger at Sean McDermott and say, you are the limiting factor of this team not making it to the Super Bowl?
No.
You think
Now
he's under
you start
pressure
that.
in your mind?
Yeah, you sit him down now and be like, hey, look, I'm not firing you, but I'm watching you. Stop fucking around.
Yeah. Rain, would you agree?
He's blessed by I think the Bills have some of the best social media in the league. And I'm not talking about their content. I'm just talking about the spin that they put on things. We're already seeing like, wow, Josh Allen is going to be one of the best quarterbacks ever to never win a ring. And I'm like, he's only fucking, 30 years old. He has plenty of time to win a ring. You can't just anoint Patrick Mahomes the Super Bowl champion for the next 10 years. You got to give the guy some amount of time. But we're already making excuses for him that he's going to get a gold jacket even though he won't get a Super Bowl. I think they're helped out a lot there. They're in that sense, like the fan base is going, well, we would be the best team in the world if it wasn't for this one dude. And I think McDermott is benefiting from that as well. But I would agree with Al. I think now is the time to be like, look, buddy, the leash is getting shorter. At some point, we need to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. And that's, I don't care about Super Bowls. If we come up against them in a wildcard round, beat them, and then your job is done. You have your job for next year. But if you're going to consistently lose to that one team in the playoffs, there's an issue and something needs to change.
Yeah. And something interesting that stands out for me that I think makes his job a little bit more precarious, which is weird, is they haven't done a Rams, right? This isn't Sean McVay who sold everything to get the ultimate team for like 1 or 2 seasons, and that was it. Like it was not sustainable. This is the sustainable squad with top talent and plenty of kind of recruitment pitches to keep good free agents coming in. You get the likes of Von Miller floating around, like that Matt Collins is in there. Like they have talent everywhere. They're not strapped for talent. And so I think that almost puts the pressure on McDermott because he's built the team. So the next guy, you don't need to be worried about him being able to build a team or sign the right guys because you have the right guys. You're looking for these like one-off guru guys that can have one great season where he unbalances the rest of the NFL. He's doing something different. He's bringing something fantastic in, and he's leveraging players that McDermott wasn't able to leverage. And you win your Super Bowl that way because you don't need this guy to be a full-on GM, coach, builder kind of thing. He's ready to go. The team is ready to go. You just need someone to get you over the hump, make yourself a little bit more difficult to play. And as you guys pointed out, just be better coached. And if you can get that in there, McDermott's done almost all the work. But at the end of the day, he only has one team he needs to beat. And he has proved 4 years in a row now that he can't do it. And I apologize if McDermott might not have been the coach for all 4 of those years. But certainly the last 2 years, he certainly hasn't done it. And he hasn't, you would argue, particularly got close, if that makes sense. Like they're not tangibly closer. Do you think this is the closest they were to beat? Like you were confident they should have.
But the last time they played, it went to overtime and they didn't even get a chance to fucking touch the football.
That's true. That's very true. I completely forgot about it. Yeah. Scratch that last bit of my my rant. But look, ultimately, I think that the point stands, right? I agree with the Perrier. Now is a problem for Sean McDermott because ultimately he has one team he has to beat and he hasn't done it. Good, bad, ugly, close, far, doesn't matter. If you're not with the W, if you're not playing in the Super Bowl, the owners of the Bills surely are going to get a bit upset eventually and demand a bit of change. So something interesting to look out for. Guys, we're going to leave it there. Anybody who's listening, thank you very much for listening. You can find this video on YouTube at Under Center Podcast is the channel. Please do like and subscribe. Leave comments. We do really enjoy the comments. So if you have anything to say, let us know. What are you looking forward to about the Super Bowl? What are you dreading about the Super Bowl? What do you think of Kendrick Lamar? How's he going to be? We'll chat about all of this next week leading up to the Super Bowl after the Pro Bowl. You can find this and all of our other podcasts in audio form on Spotify and Apple Music. Just search Under Center Podcast. And of course, you can find us on all the social media, X, Instagram, everywhere else. do please let us know. We try and keep the news coming as fresh as possible. Always love the interactions. You can find us at Under Center Pod on both of those. So, Rian and Al, thanks a million for joining me this evening.
It's been a pleasure.
And to everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.